I want to tell you about the moment I stopped buying commercial pest sprays forever. I was visiting an Amish property outside of Holmes County, Ohio a few summers ago, and the gardener walked me over to his vegetable patch. His tomatoes were clean, his squash leaves were untouched, his cabbages looked like they belonged in a catalog. And right at the edge of the garden, hanging from a short wooden stake, was a plastic bottle with the top cut off and flipped upside down like a funnel. Inside that bottle was a layer of dead insects about 2 inches deep. Wasps, flies, beetles, moths, hundreds of them. I asked him what was in the bottle and he smiled and said sugar water and a little patience. That was it. No brand name, no chemical label, no trip to the garden center, just a homemade trap made from a bottled water, sugar, and a few days of fermentation that was pulling pests out of his garden faster than anything I'd ever bought off a shelf. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to make these traps, what goes in them, which pests they target, and where to place them for the best results. And near the end, I'll share a specific bait recipe for Japanese beetles that had me filling a jar in under 48 hours. Here's what I'm not proud of. For years, I was the guy at the garden center every 2 weeks buying a new spray, a new powder, a new something, and sure, it would knock back the pests for a few days, but they always came back, and I swear they came back angrier. What I didn't realize was that every time I sprayed, I was also killing the ladybugs, the parasitic wasps, the ground beetles, and all the other predator insects that were actually doing free pest control for me. I was solving a short-term problem while making the long-term problem worse. When I started learning how Amish families handle pest pressure, the difference in thinking hit me hard. They weren't trying to kill everything. They were outsmarting specific pests with specific traps, and they were doing it with ingredients from the kitchen pantry. The philosophy behind Amish pest management is the same philosophy that runs through everything they do. Don't buy what you can make. Don't poison what you can outsmart. And don't fight nature when you can work with it. In plain communities, particularly in the older order groups in Lancaster County and Holmes County, commercial pesticides simply aren't part of the equation. They don't use them. That's not a preference. It's a way of life. So they had to figure out what actually works using what they already have. And here's what they understood through generations of watching their gardens. Insects don't find your crops by accident. They follow scent trails. They're attracted to specific colors. They navigate by fermentation signals that tell them where ripe, decaying organic matter is, which to an insect means food and a place to lay eggs. Once you understand what draws a pest in, you can use that knowledge to draw it somewhere else, somewhere it goes in but doesn't come back out. That's the entire principle, and the science of insect olfaction and behavior backs up every bit of it. Let me show you the traps. The first trap is the one I saw in that Amish garden, and it's the most versatile. It targets flying pests, including wasps, hornets, fruit flies, codling moths, and a range of other flying insects that damage fruits and vegetables. You need a 2-liter plastic bottle, or any large plastic bottle with a narrow neck. A glass jar with a funnel works too. Cut the top third of the bottle off and flip it upside down so the neck points down into the body of the bottle like a funnel. That funnel shape is critical. Insects fly in through the narrow opening, drop down toward the bait, and then can't figure out how to fly back up through the small hole. It's a one-way entrance. Now the bait, in a saucepan, dissolve 1 cup of sugar in 2 cups of warm water. Stir until it's fully dissolved, then pour it into the bottle and let it sit uncovered for 2 to 3 days before you seal the funnel top in place. You want the sugar water to begin fermenting. That fermentation produces acetic acid and ethanol, which release volatile compounds that insects can detect from a surprising distance. Fresh sugar water attracts almost nothing. Fermented sugar water is irresistible to flying pests. You can accelerate the fermentation by adding a 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast when you mix the sugar water. That cuts the waiting time to about 24 hours. Once the bait is fermenting and the funnel top is secured, hang the trap about 3 to 4 feet off the ground on a stake, fence post, or low tree branch at the perimeter of your garden, not in the middle of your crops. At the edge, you want to intercept pests before they reach your plants. Within 24 to 48 hours, you should see significant accumulation in the bottom of the trap. I checked my first one after 2 days and counted over 200 insects, mostly mostly wasps and fruit flies that would have otherwise been on my tomatoes and peaches. Refresh the bait every 5 to 7 days or whenever it gets full. In peak summer, I go through bait weekly. One important note, this trap will occasionally catch a honeybee, especially if placed too close to flowering plants. To minimize that, keep traps at least 10 feet away from any flowers or flowering herbs and avoid placing them near your pollinator garden. The Amish gardener I learned from was clear about this. You want the trap near the vegetables, not near the blossoms. The second trap targets one of the most frustrating pests in any garden, slugs and snails. If you've ever walked out in the morning to find your lettuce and strawberries or hostas chewed to shreds overnight, this one's for you. Take a shallow container, a tuna can, a yogurt cup cut down to about 2 inches tall, or a small plastic deli container. Bury it in the soil near your most slug-damaged plant so the rim sits just at ground level or about a 1/4 inch above. You want slugs to be able to crawl in easily, but not have the rim so high that they turn away. Fill the container about 3/4 full with cheap beer. Any brand works. The yeast in the beer produces carbon dioxide and fermentation compounds that slugs find irresistible. They crawl in, can't climb back out of the liquid, and drown. If you don't want to use beer, you can make your own bait by mixing 1 cup of warm water with 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of flour, and ½ a teaspoon of active dry yeast. Let it sit until it starts to bubble. It works just as well as beer and costs almost nothing. Place 1 trap for every 4 to 6 feet of garden bed that has slug pressure. Check them every morning and empty them as needed. I have had mornings where a single tuna can hold over 30 slugs. 30 in one night from 1 little can of cheap beer. When I think about the slug pellets I used to buy and scatter around, watching them dissolve in the rain and barely make a dent, this comparison is almost embarrassing. The science here is straightforward. Slugs navigate primarily by chemoreception, detecting chemical signals in their environment. The fermentation byproducts in beer or yeast bait mimic the scent profile of decaying plant matter, which is exactly what slugs seek out for food. You're speaking their language and leading them to a trap instead of to your lettuce. The third trap exploits something fascinating about insect vision. Many common garden pests, including aphids, whiteflies, fungus gnats, and cucumber beetles, are strongly attracted to the color yellow. They perceive bright yellow as a signal for new, tender plant growth, which is exactly where they want to feed and lay eggs. The Amish use this against them with a dead simple setup. Take a yellow plastic plate, a yellow painted board, or even a piece of stiff yellow cardboard about 8 to 10 inches across. Coat one side with a thin layer of petroleum jelly or a sticky substance like tanglefoot. Mount it on a short stake about 12 to 18 inches above the soil level, right at the height of your crop canopy, and place it near plants that are experiencing aphid or whitefly pressure. Insects fly toward the yellow surface, land on it, and get stuck. That's the entire mechanism. No bait, no scent, no chemicals, just color and stickiness. I set up 4 of these yellow sticky boards around my cucumber patch last summer and caught so many cucumber beetles in the first week that I had to scrape them off and reapply the petroleum jelly. The plants next to those boards had virtually no beetle damage, while my neighbor's cucumbers across the fence were getting hammered. Replace or refresh the sticky surface every week to 10 days or whenever the board is covered enough that new insects can't stick. And here's a tip from an Amish gardener in Lancaster County. If you want to catch fungus gnats around your seedlings, specifically set the yellow board at soil level, laying flat, coated with petroleum jelly. Fungus gnats hover just above the soil surface and they'll land on that yellow board in droves. Now, what I'm showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger picture. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique connects to a whole system, and that system is what makes the difference between a garden that struggles and a garden that practically takes care of itself. I spent years learning how it all fits together, and I've put everything into a step-by-step guide called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's got the complete 5 defense layers, the companion planting charts, the 4-bed crop rotation, all of it laid out day by day so you're never guessing what to do next. Now, what I'm showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger picture. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique connects to a whole system, and that system is what makes the difference between a garden that struggles and a garden that practically takes care of itself. I spent years months learning how it all fits together. And I've put everything into a step-by-step guide called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's got the complete 5 defense layers, the companion planting charts, the 4-bed crop rotation, all of it laid out day by day so you're never guessing what to do next. If you want to go deeper than what we can cover in one video, there are 2 easy ways to get it. You can click the link right down there in the description below this video, or if you're watching this on your TV or your computer, just grab your phone, open up the camera, and point it at the QR code on screen right now. It'll take you straight to the guide. No searching, no typing anything in. All right, let's keep going. This 4th trap goes after crawling pests, and it's one of the easiest to make. Earwigs, ground beetles, pill bugs, and other crawling insects that chew on seedlings and low-growing crops at night are drawn powerfully to the scent of molasses. The Amish version of this trap is so simple, it almost doesn't seem like it should work, but it does. Mix 1 part molasses with 3 parts warm water in a wide-mouth jar or shallow container. Stir until the molasses is fully dissolved. Bury the container at soil level the same way you would for the slug trap near crops that are showing nighttime chewing damage. The sweet, dark scent of molasses draws crawling insects in, and the sticky liquid traps them. Earwigs are especially susceptible to this. They feed at night and are strongly attracted to sweet fermentation scents. Place these traps in the evening and check them first thing in the morning. Refresh the bait every 3 to 4 days or sooner if it gets diluted by rain. I usually set out 3 or 4 of these in a line along any bed where I'm seeing overnight damage to young transplants. The first morning I checked them, I was genuinely stunned. Each jar had dozens of earwigs, pill bugs, and small beetles. My transplant damage dropped dramatically within a week. One thing to mention honestly, the molasses trap is not selective the way the yellow board is. You may catch some ground beetles that are actually beneficial predators. If you notice a high number of predatory ground beetles, which are typically larger, darker, and faster moving than pest species, consider reducing the number of traps or repositioning them closer to the specific plants showing damage rather than scattering them broadly. The Amish gardener I learned this from told me something I've never forgotten. He said, you don't set a trap for everything everywhere. You set it where the problem is. That's the difference between pest management and pest panic. Now let me talk about placement and timing, because these 2 factors are what separate a trap that catches a handful of insects from one that catches hundreds. Placement first. Every trap I've described works best at the perimeter of your garden or directly adjacent to the specific crops under attack, not in the center of your beds. Think of it like setting up a checkpoint at the border. Rather than chasing intruders through the house, you want to intercept pests on their way in. For the fermented sugar bottle traps, hang them at the edges of the garden, spaced about 8 to 10 feet apart along whichever side faces the most open ground or the direction prevailing wind comes from. Scent carries on the breeze, so positioning downwind means the fermentation smell drifts outward and draws insects back toward the trap. For slug traps, place them directly between your most vulnerable crops and wherever slugs are coming from, which is usually a mulched area, a damp border, or any shaded moist spot nearby. For yellow boards, position them right at canopy height among the affected plants. For molasses traps, set them along the base of beds where you see overnight damage. Timing matters just as much. Don't set all your traps out in April and expect season-long results. Deploy them when specific pests become active. Slugs are worst in spring and fall when moisture is high, so set beer traps from early spring through late fall. Flying pest traps are most effective from late spring through early fall when wasps, fruit flies, and moths are actively foraging. Yellow boards should go out as soon as you notice aphids, whiteflies, or cucumber beetles appearing, which for most of zones 5 through 8 is late spring into midsummer. Molasses traps are most useful from late spring through midsummer when earwig and crawling pest populations peak, and refresh everything on schedule. A stale trap doesn't catch anything. Mark it on your calendar. Every 5 to 7 days for liquid baits. Every 7 to 10 days for sticky boards. It takes 5 minutes each time. And the difference between a fresh trap and a week-old trap is the difference between a jar full of pests and a jar full of nothing. Now let me share some patterns I see in conventional pest management and how this Amish approach handles things differently. The first pattern is reaching for a spray the moment you see a pest. Most of us have been trained to react to pest damage by buying a product that kills the pest on contact, and it works briefly, but broad-spectrum pesticides, even organic ones like pyrethrin, kill indiscriminately. They take out ladybugs, lacewings, parasitic wasps, and hoverflies, all of which eat pest insects for a living. When those predators are gone, the pest population rebounds faster than the predator population, and within a few weeks, you're worse off than before. The Amish trap approach removes specific pests without touching the beneficial insects that are providing free, ongoing pest control. Over the course of a season, gardens managed with traps and beneficial insects develop their own self-correcting ecosystem. The pest pressure actually decreases year over year instead of increasing. The second pattern is spending money on commercial traps that underperform. I've bought commercial Japanese beetle traps, yellow sticky traps, pheromone traps, and fruit fly traps from garden centers. They work to varying degrees, but they cost $5 to $15 each, need proprietary refills, and often aren't as effective as homemade versions because the bait isn't fresh. A homemade fermented sugar trap costs pennies, uses ingredients from your kitchen, and outperforms most commercial alternatives because you're using fresh, actively fermenting bait rather than a dried chemical lure that lost its potency sitting on a store shelf for 6 months. The third pattern is applying the same solution to every pest problem. A spray is a spray is a spray, but every pest species has different behaviors, different attractants, and different vulnerabilities. Slugs respond to yeast fermentation. Aphids respond to yellow coloring. Wasps respond to sugar fermentation. Earwigs respond to molasses. The Amish approach treats each pest as a distinct problem with a distinct solution, which is why it works so much better than a one-size-fits-all chemical application. When you match the trap to the pest, you catch the pest. When you spray everything with the same product, you might slow the pest down temporarily while destroying the allies that were helping you long-term. The fourth pattern is giving up on pest control because nothing seems to work. I've been there. You spray, you dust, you buy traps, and the pests keep coming. It feels hopeless. But in most cases, the problem isn't that pest control doesn't work. The problem is that the methods being used are either too broad, too infrequent, or not matched to the specific pest. These homemade traps aren't magic. They're targeted. And when you deploy the right trap for the right pest in the right location at the right time, the results are genuinely dramatic. Not perfect, not 100% elimination, but a level of control that makes the difference between losing a crop and harvesting one. Now, here's a bonus trap that I have to share because it solved one of the most frustrating pest problems I've ever dealt with. Japanese beetles. If you've ever grown roses, raspberries, grapes, or anything in the stone fruit family, you know these metallic green and bronze beetles can skeletonize a plant in days. Commercial Japanese beetle traps use pheromone lures that actually attract more beetles to your yard than they catch, which can make the problem worse. The Amish version I learned uses fermented fruit instead of pheromones, and the difference is significant. Take a wide-mouth mason jar or a large yogurt container. Fill it about halfway with a mash of overripe fruit. Bananas work best, but peaches, plums, or any soft fruit that's starting to turn will do. Add enough water to cover the fruit, then stir in 2 tablespoons of sugar and a 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast. Let the mixture sit in a warm spot for 24 hours until it's actively bubbling and smells strongly of fermentation. Place the jar on the ground or on a low platform near the plants where you're seeing Japanese beetle damage, but at least 6 to 8 feet away from the plants themselves, so you're drawing beetles away from your crops, not toward them. The fermented fruit produces a cocktail of volatile compounds that Japanese beetles find extremely attractive, similar in effectiveness to pheromone lures, but without the long-range signal that pulls in beetles from neighboring yards. The beetles fly in, land on the rim, and drop into the liquid. Refresh the bait every 4 to 5 days. During peak Japanese beetle season, which runs from late June through August in most of zones 4 through 8, I fill a quart jar every 3 to 4 days. The first season I used this, the beetle damage on my raspberries dropped by what I'd estimate was about 70%. Not total elimination, but a massive improvement over anything I tried before, and it cost me 1 overripe banana and a pinch of yeast. Now, what I've shared with you today is a real piece of the puzzle, but it's still just one piece. If you're tired of fighting the same battles every season, if you want a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, then I'd really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and it's everything I've learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It's got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold, and it includes the companion planting field guide, so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is you can click the link right down there in the description below this video, or if you're watching this on your TV or your computer, just grab your phone, open up the camera, and point it at the QR code on screen right now. It'll take you straight to the guide. No searching, no typing anything in.